The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Sign the promo code SGPN to score up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgambling.com/rhythm, sportsgambling.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Saturday morning, roughly 3:45 a.m. Eastern Time on August 24th. I'm your host, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode because it is time to get into the final in Winston-Salem, the final episode pre-US Open. So we're going to get into the actual matchup between Sonego and Mickelson in a second. Before we do that, I want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. Also a reminder that if you're still listening to the podcast audio only on Spotify or Apple, you can still show support, leaving a rating or a review. So no matter how you support the show, you can still show some support, whether you are once again listening to the live stream. Probably not. It's like 3:45 in the morning. But if you are, then shout out to all of you. Don't be afraid to hop into the live stream comment section or watch it on YouTube afterwards. Leave some comments down below. Show some support, though, if you do enjoy the show. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. A lot of great overall Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs, all high quality, all very affordable. Also have other shows with their merchandise as well on the same platform. And you have a great deal for college football because everything in the merch store is 10% off with the promo code football. So once again, if you do want to get yourself a Tennis Gambling Podcast shirt, I recommend getting something with discount. Use the promo code football at checkout to get 10% off. Plus, a reminder for college football, it's starting on Saturday. And you can tune into the Sports Camp Podcast and the College Football Experience for all Week 0 picks and all of your favorite futures. Time to start off, though, with the actual recap of the last episode. Unfortunately for the actual semifinals, not a good episode for us. In fact, we got basically everything wrong. Now, starting off with the lock and dog, we went 0 for 2. Had Goffin money line as the lock at minus 124. That one actually exploded. That line closed like minus 150. And he got absolutely destroyed. Sonego killed him, and Goffin, who I thought turned back the clock, went back to 2024 because he was awful throughout the entirety of that matchup. As for the dog, we ended up losing with Carreño Busta on the money line at plus 110. Bit rough. He did a lead 5-2 double break in the first set. Then he totally fell apart. Then he got injured and eventually retired midway through the second set. So kind of unfortunate that eventually his body kind of broke down again and he ended up retiring. However, I am going to point out, though, that if you ended up getting the plus 110 line on Bet365, you actually didn't lose. You broke even because Bet365 voids any retirement. So if you actually got plus 110, you ended up getting your money back. I'm going to grade it as a loss, though, because most of you probably just bet on a local or on another book that graded as a loss. So I'm going to count it as a loss. But once again, if you did get the plus 110 on Bet365, you did technically get your money back via refund. But Busta looked really good early. He was up 5-2 double break. And then, unfortunately, Mickelson locked in, and you saw Busta really just have a lot of physical rallies with Mickelson, and Mickelson being the younger guy and the more, I'd say, durable guy, was able to withstand the damage associated with that. Busta couldn't do it. It sucks, because we know that he was in great form, and it looked like he was poised to maybe win a title. And then, unfortunately, the injury that he suffered a couple rounds ago against Vukic, either that reappeared or he just decided to save his energy for the US Open. Point is, he decided it wasn't worth it, and he ended up quitting. So kind of unfortunate there. Hopefully your book voided if you had the money line, but 0 for 2 for us, not great. Interesting matchup, though, for the final between Mickelson and Sonego. Now, a reminder that we do have a silver lining, even though we ended up losing the lock and dog picks, which was the outrights episode, because we ended up losing Shang via withdrawal. We lost to Foolin, who ended up losing that heartbreaker to Eubanks in the third set breaker. Lost Chorich, who choked away a couple match points against Ichikata. But we do have Sonego at 29-1. So we're one match away from winning a 29-1 shot, and hopefully Sonego gets it done. He is a dog in this matchup, but it's very cheap. He's around plus 115. If you want to hedge, you can. Point is, though, Sonego was our, I'd say, long shot flyer, based on upside and based on the history of the event being an absolute circus. And Sonego has kind of coasted up to this point. So overall, hopefully, once again, we get the 29-1 shot home, and that could be our second largest outright of the season, right behind Nishioka on the mantle a couple weeks ago, who won Atlanta. Either way, though, time to actually get into the preview for the final. Before we get into that, though, do want to think if there's any other news that's worth talking about for tennis. Can't really think of anything. I think I covered most of it. I talked about US Open qualifying in the last episode and kind of how that all unfolded. Overall fun atmosphere, but a couple of heartbreakers there. Cressy being one of them, who ended up losing in qualifying. Besides that, Sinner ended up, I'm trying to remember exactly what Sinner did. I think he fired some coaches or some trainers in his first press conference post the scandal. And yeah, he ended up parting ways with his fitness coach. and is a physiotherapist after what happened with the positive test. So you can make the argument that it needed to be done. Either way, though, that was his first overall public appearance since the scandal, and he decided to give his, once again, a couple guys on his staff the you're fired treatment. So now, hopefully, that can clear anything up in the future. Besides that, trying to think of anything else that's worth talking about. A couple interesting things for the women's side. Shelby Rogers announced she's going to retire after the U.S. Open. Decent career. I'd say it wasn't anything special. She's only 31, but I guess she decided it was time to stop based on her injuries in the past. So she's going to retire. Her highest ranking was 30, so not really anything worth, for a career, but she's an American. I'll mention it. She's going to retire there. For the women's side, I might as well just mention the actual matches that happened on Friday, so we have some free time. So for the matches that actually took place on Friday, you had a really, really fun match between Kessler and between Potapova, and that was a fun three-setter, which was an absolute war. Kessler did win in three. Couple of controversial, I'd say, let situations, or just the overall Hawkeye. Seemed like Potapova was really annoyed at the actual I'd say, technology that was being used, and it seemed like she was really claiming there were a couple of bad calls. They didn't show any replays of it, but the point is, it did seem like technology was definitely a factor in the late stages. They had a marathon game, which eventually Kessler broke in the third set, and she eventually closed the door as she won 6-3. You also ended up seeing Haddad Maia ended up winning. She ended up beating Siniakova in 3. Haddad Maia's been in good form. Nice to see her back on track, and now you have a fun matchup there between Kessler and Haddad Maia in the final. As for Monterrey, the 500 event, you saw Noskova win twice, as she ended up having to beat Svitolina and Navarro in the same day, as she ended up beating Svitolina in straight sets early, and she ended up beating Navarro 7-6, 7-5 late, so good for her. And Sun, who had the solid run there in Wimbledon as a qualifier, has made another deep run, as she ended up beating Alexandrova in 3 sets, final set breaker. So good for her, kind of showing up and backing up the Wimbledon result, showing it's not a fluke. She's actually good at tennis. She's ranked 57th in the world right now. Good for her. Nice to see her and Kessler being 2 Cinderella runs to potentially win a title here. Kessler was a wild card. It's a very impressive run by her. That kind of sums it up for the women's side. Just kind of fun to keep an eye out on some of the longer shots with Sun, who has been really solid in Wimbledon onward. So good for her. Kind of a late bloomer for her career. And you saw Kessler, who looked very good, and now she's going to be a dog against Haddad Maia. We'll see how she does in the final. Either way, though, that's going to wrap it up for the actual matches for Friday. Now it's time to get into the actual preview for the one match for the episode in Winston-Salem. Before we get into that, I want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Nordic Fantasy, because they, with their pick'em, give you a chance to win 1,000 times your entry, or you can play fantasy football the right way with Best Ball. Best Ball Mania is now live with $50 million in prizes. You have specials and boosts and all flex entries. I know that I definitely liked Tina Charles higher on her rebounds, and that worked out pretty well for the Friday game. I gave that out on the WNBA Gambling Podcast. Give that a listen if you have not done so already. For the actual matchups on Saturday, what do I want to go with? We'll switch it up a little bit. We'll go with college football. We'll take Uyunglele lower on the passing yards. I think Florida State's going to try to run the ball a lot, and they do have a pretty solid overall backfield. Give me Uyunglele to go lower on his passing yards for that game in Ireland. Reminder to sign up the promo code SGPN to claim your special and first deposit offer up to $1,000 of bonus cash on fantasy. Promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Circus Survivor and Circuit Millions. Circuit Sports is back with Circus Survivor and Circuit Millions, giving away $16 million guaranteed prizes. And if you don't have your trip booked there for Las Vegas, then this is a good time to go, because you're in the middle of Ultimate Contest weekend, which is a great time to go to Vegas. You can hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events in the world of sportsbook. August 22nd through the 24th. Use promo code SGP15. Save 50% off your hotel room for sign-up weekend. So anytime you can save 15% on a Vegas hotel room, definitely recommend doing so. Sign up in person at Circuit Sports for the contest, but now it's September 7th, and use a proxy play for anywhere. You also have a deal with a proxy. Go to proxy.footballcontest.com. Save you $50 with the promo code SGP, and you'll also get a free hat. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened on Friday for the men and the women. Now it's time to get into the actual preview. For the one match on the card, you have the final taking place between Mickelson and Sonego. Now, a reminder, we already have Sonego at 29-1 as an outright, so we're probably not going to have additional action on the side for the actual preview. I'm still going to talk about it. Point is, though, for the actual match itself, taking place at around 5 p.m. Eastern, I believe, on the East Coast. For this one, though, you have Mickelson as the favorite, as he is currently minus 135. Sonego is plus 115. For the spread, minus 1.5 for Mickelson, plus 1.5 for Sonego. For the over-under in games, you have 22.5 and minus 130 on the over, or 23.5 with the under being minus 125. For the over 2.5 sets, you have around plus 130. For the under 2.5 sets, you have around minus 150. For the set spread here, you have Mickelson in straight sets at plus 180, and you have Sonego to win straight sets at plus 260. Team total for both players is 12.5. So they faced off one time this year already, actually. Faced off on clay a couple months ago in May, as they ended up facing off in Cagliari, which I believe was a challenger event. And you saw Sonego win in 3. So he ended up winning 6-3, 2-6, 6-3. Does it matter? Not really, because it was on clay. And we know that Mickelson is not exactly the best clay court player as an American. He's fine. There are definitely worse clay Americans out there, but the point is he is definitely not comfortable or as comfortable on clay as he's on hard court, where Sonego has been fine on clay, not amazing. It was also his home country, being in Italy. So I'm sure the crowd played a factor. Point is, though, second matchup this year, first one was competitive, and Sonego did win. Now, looking at the path of both players, Mickelson has had a pretty easy run based on overall sets. However, a lot of the sets were competitive. So he's only dropped one set in the first 4 rounds, or I should say he's dropped one set in the first 3.5 rounds because Busta ended up retiring midway through the second, but he was already up a break in the second set. So you can kind of assume that he was going to get the job done. Point is, though, beat Fucsovic 7-6, 6-4, beat Berg 6-1, 6-2, beat Eubanks in a third set tiebreak, and he ended up beating Busta 7-6, 2-1. As for Sonego, though, he's only played 3 matches because he ended up getting a walkover with Shang in one of the earlier rounds, but he has not dropped a set. He is currently 6-0 in sets, and only one of those sets had at least 10 games. So, or I should say, at least 11 games. So the point is he has been winning pretty quickly in these sets. He was able to beat Goffin comfortably 6-3, 6-2, didn't face a break point in the entire match, beat Kotov in straight sets, and beat Stricker in straight sets. Sonego's only been broken one time in the entire event. One time. So the serve's been very good. He's been aggressive with the return. Against Goffin in particular, he was very aggressive coming to the net, and it seemed like he was always willing to come forward with the overall, I'd say, just overall strong forehands side to side. He was very willing to dare Goffin to hit passing shots, and he couldn't really do so. But Sonego, underrated net skills, and I do think that can play a factor in this one for both guys. I think Mickelson can be a bit too, I'd say, passive on the baseline at times, and Sonego, I do think, will be able to, I'd say, try to be the aggressor in most of these rallies. Now, Mickelson eventually, I think, will change course. I think eventually he will try to up the pace a bit, but he's more of a rallier, and I think Sonego is more of a dynamic shot maker, and that can result in a fun head-to-head matchup here in the final on Saturday. Now, do I agree with the lines? I think 135 is a bit steep. I understand why Mickelson's favored, and I get the fact that he beat Busta, who's in great form. He was down 5-2 in that first set, and then I'm not exactly sure when Busta got hurt exactly, but the point is he was down in the double break, and he was able to come back and win it. Mickelson's been very vulnerable, especially with the serve so far in this event, and we've seen him blow a bunch of good opportunities to win, I'd say, more convincingly. The Eubanks match, for example, he was up a break in the third set, and then Eubanks broke back, and he got broken multiple times by Eubanks, who's really not a good overall returner. Mickelson's 6'4". He really needs to work on the serve. And I think that Sonego, who's only been broken one time in the entire event, might feel the pressure that Mickelson can put on you as a returner. But the problem that I have is that if Mickelson's going to be constantly battling in the service games, and if Sonego's going to be able to generate, let's say, 7 break points in this match, let's say 7. Maybe it's going to be more, maybe less. The point is Mickelson eventually is going to have to break through on the return games because he has really not served as well as he probably should have as a 6'4" guy. So I think Sonego will be able to pressure. He's a very good returner so far in the event. Mentioned before, he came forward a lot against Goffin. He's been very aggressive. It seems like it's kind of a new, I'd say, strategy for him, being willing to trust the net skills a bit more, and it's worked out. He hasn't dropped the set yet. So I think that looking at the overall matchup, I think the price should be a bit cheaper on Mickelson. I can understand why as a favorite. To be honest, I might actually consider this like minus 110, minus 110. Maybe Mickelson like minus 115, minus 120, but I think it's close to the 135. 135 feels a bit steep to me. I'll link to Sonego based on the value. Once again, not going to bet the money line because we already have him at 29-1 to win the event. So I do think that Sonego has a chance to win this, and I think the odds don't reflect how good his chances actually are. Their lines are close. I'm not saying that the lines are predicting Mickelson to kill him, but it just feels like Sonego has not dropped a set in the entire tournament against Mickelson, who has been dropping a set, and he's had a couple breakers in the event so far. The event's been a lot easier for Sonego than it has been for Mickelson. So I think that the line's kind of disrespectful that Sonego hasn't dropped a set yet and he's a dog in this one, which I think is a little bit, I'd say, harsh for a guy that he's already beaten earlier this year. So I'm going to link to Sonego in this one. I think that he is in good form. I think Mickelson's serve is going to be a problem because it has been. And Mickelson's going to have to really pressure with the return. And I think that he can do so, but I think Sonego's going to get his chances, and I think that Mickelson should as well. Should be a fun matchup, should be competitive, but I like the plus money. I see it being a close matchup, maybe a coin flip, and Sonego has served very well so far in the event. Give me Sonego here at plus money. Now, for the actual total, I think I'm going to have to lean to the over. First meeting went to 3 sets, and I do think that Sonego, despite winning every match here in straight sets, can be, I'd say, in some potential, I'd say, hot water throughout the course of these sets, because Mickelson has been really, really good. We saw it at the end of the first set. Busta might have been slowing down a bit, but Mickelson was actually just a wall. I have to give props to Mickelson. He didn't roll over in the first set, and he went down swinging. Did the same thing against Eubanks in the second set of that match. He ended up losing that set, but he was down double break, and he was never really willing to throw in the towel. Point is, I'm going to like the over here. I think that it's going to be a close matchup. I think that both guys have unique styles. I see mostly a baseline battle, but I think Sonego might come forward. Maybe Mickelson will do as well. But I am going to link to the over. I think that it's going to be a close matchup. I don't mind the over 22.5 games. Don't mind the over 2.5 sets. We saw it already happen already in the first meeting this season. So give me the over in this one. I feel like the odds, even though I disagree with maybe the margin that Mickelson's a favorite, I think it's pretty close. I said 120. It was 135. They're expecting a close matchup. I agree. And I think it's going to be a very fun atmosphere in Winston-Salem in the Saturday card. So maybe if you want to watch the match, you could have 1 or 2 screens on college football and maybe one other screen on the tennis match. So it should be fun. Looking forward to it. But for this one, I am going to link to Sonego for the value. And well, my opinion is I think it's going to be a coin flip match. And I think that getting plus money is a good deal. But I think it's going to be fun either way. So link to the over and give me the dog in that one. That's going to wrap it up for the actual preview of the final in Winston-Salem. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks. Before into that one, remember once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm can definitely help you build your own betting models, whether it involves college football or even golf or WNBA. They have you covered for a lot of different sports. SGPN's proud partner, Rhythm, is the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform that helps bettors with all abilities to help build their own models. And they also help you with projections that you can get for money lines, spreads, totals, and props in seconds. Build your own model, copy one of the top performing models, or you can just borrow one that's already made from Rhythm, or you can even just build your own from scratch. Point is, though, you can simplify your betting process for college football on Saturday. You can use Rhythm for WNBA and golf, like I said before. And a reminder that if you do want to get some feedback on maybe Montana State, an FCS team, laying 2 touchdowns against an FBS team, and you want some thoughts, let Rhythm help you out with explaining the logic behind why the spread might be where it's located. Claim or set in free trial today by going to sportscampus.com Rhythm, sportscampus.com, which is RATHMM. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace for the MLB, which makes getting tickets easier and faster. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down closer to game time when it is, once again, a great opportunity for you to potentially get very cheap tickets if you want to go to a baseball game at the last second, or maybe you want to go to college football. Maybe not in Ireland, but the point is you can definitely use this for college football as well. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, and I do love their lowest price guarantee, because it means that if you end up finding a seat and you find out that it was actually available for cheap elsewhere, Game Time will not only give you a solid promo, it's probably the best promo you're going to find anywhere else. Game Time will give you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper ticket on another platform, which means that you will actually get to go for free, and they'll pay you a little bit, 10% on top, if you end up finding the deal that maybe Game Time missed, which is definitely a good incentive to actually use the platform, because you get rewarded for shopping around and trying to find a better price elsewhere and then circling back to Game Time. But a reminder that you should download the app, create an account, use code SGPN for tomorrow, resolve your first purchase. Terms apply again, create an account, redeem code SGPN. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished getting into the preview for the final in Winston-Salem. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock in this one, unfortunately, it's going to be bringing back bad memories because we lost on this prop in the last final in Cincinnati. I am going to go with the under half a tie break at -121 on Bet Rivers. Covering why I'm going to go with the under half a breaker. First reason, Sonego has been winning sets comfortably, and he's not had many breakers at all recently. 6 straight matches with no tie breaks. So the point is Sonego has been winning rather convincingly, and even when he loses, there are a lot of blowout sets. We know that mentally he can, let's say, fall apart quite quickly. And if you are looking at the last couple matches, he has had 0 tie breaks, doing the math quickly in my head, 8, 10, in 14 straight sets. 15 straight sets, actually. So 15 straight sets, no tie breaks, and I do think that is definitely something worth monitoring. You are looking at the price being available at like minus 150 on Bet365, so you're also shopping around saving 30 cents, give or take. Mickelson, though, has had a lot of breakers. He's had 3 of them in the event. However, none of those breakers came with straight holds. All of them came with at least 2 breaks. So the point is Mickelson, as I said before, has had a really hard time holding serve constantly in this event. I mentioned before that Sonego has only been broken 1 time in the entire tournament, but I do think Mickelson, even though the breakers have been, I'd say, quite common in his tournament run, none of them were easy. In fact, you needed a break from both guys to get there. It's asking a lot. I think that asking for each guy to break, I'd say the same amount in the first set is, once again, a little bit of a slippery slope, and 121 is a great price. So I do think you're looking at an opportunity to get the under half a breaker here. Yes, Mickelson's had a couple of them. Every one of them involved a break by each player, minimum. So I think that you're looking at kind of the expectation that Mickelson's tiebreak history is going to repeat itself. I'm not sure it's going to. And I think 121 is a great price to fade it. And you're also looking at the meeting earlier this year. They went to 3 sets. Sonego won. Yes, it was on clay, but each set was lopsided. Each set had less than 10 games. I think getting to 13 in a set will require a couple of breaks. I don't see each guy holding 6 times in a row. And if that's going to be the case, I do like this price quite a bit. Mostly a value play at 121. So give me the under half a tie break at minus 121 for my lock. For my dog, I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets here at plus 135. Said before, I didn't exactly see much separating these two guys. I think that Sonego is undervalued on the money line, but I think the money line should be close, and I think Mickelson is definitely capable of winning a set. We know Sonego can short circuit at times. The unforced error count can rise, and I do think that you might see a little bit of a balancing act between both guys, which should result in a fun, competitive matchup. We already saw it. It was in the meeting in May. Match went to 3 sets. Pretty straightforward, actually, because each set was pretty lopsided. So maybe history repeats itself, and you get a fun final between 2 guys that I think most people didn't expect to be here. Point is, though, the money line prices are close, and the odds makers kind of expect it to be close. I agree. But based on the earlier meeting this season, that went to 3, and based on what I think should be a very, very entertaining matchup, based on the form that both guys have been in for the event, I see a war, so I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets at plus 135 as my dog. So once again, my picks for the final in Winston-Salem on Saturday. The lock's going to be on Mickelson and Sonego under. Half a tiebreak at minus 121. And my dog's going to be on Sonego and Mickelson over 2.5 sets at plus 135. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. You can find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio. A reminder, we're going to have episodes for both the Women's U.S. Open and the Men's U.S. Open. But I misspoke in the last episode. The U.S. Open starts on Monday, not Sunday. So we actually do have extra time. I will be doing 1 episode for the outright preview on Saturday and 1 episode for the outright preview on Sunday. Think we're going to do the women's first this time. So we're going to have a women's episode probably on Saturday night because I want to make sure that the Winston-Salem match ends first so I can recap it. But the point is we're going to have an episode tomorrow, or technically today because it's 4 a.m., for WTA US Open. We're going to go through quarter odds, outrights, all that fun stuff, lock and dog pick for the first round at the end. Then we'll do the same thing for the men's tournament on Sunday. Until next time, though, find me on the NBA show, find me on the WNBA show as well, find me on the MLB show as well. And until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.